Jesus alone. I must tell Jesus all of my troubles. He is a kind, compassionate friend. If I but ask him, he will deliver, makes up my troubles quickly and end. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, I cannot bear my burdens alone. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, Jesus can help me, Jesus alone. Oh, how the world to evil allures me. Oh, how my heart is tempted to sin. I must tell Jesus, and he will help me over the world, the victory to win. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, I cannot bear my burdens alone. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus.
we'll talk later. So I didn't. I said, just a minute and I will get him. So I went out in the garage and said, hey, honey, Kurt's on the phone. He comes running in the door, picks up the phone, and has a 30-minute, lively, energized, animated, happy, laughing conversation.
Did you get all those adjectives? They were intentional.
He was just alive, and I thought, he doesn't act like that. He doesn't respond to me that way. So I simply said when they got off the phone, 30 minutes later, okay, what did he say? So ladies, tell me what Tom told me after that. When I asked him, what did Kurt say? What did Tom tell me?
Go ahead, you can be vulnerable.
What was it?
No.
When she asked me, so what did you talk about? I said, oh, here's a direct quote. Oh, nothing.
Nothing.
Not nothing, nothing. Oh, nothing. Okay.
Not even, well, one whole word and a partial word. That was the summation of a 30-minute energized conversation. It was nothing.
So now I want to interpret this for the women have already interpreted it, but for the guys. So guys, did I mean to make my wife feel the way she felt? Did I mean to do that? Was it my intention? No. By the fact that I had time for my good friend Kurt and no time for my good dear wife, did I intend to hurt her by that? No. So, here's the interesting thing. When I had this, as she calls it, animated conversation with Kurt, and then when she simply asks me, so, what did you talk about? And I said, oh, nothing. Now I'm doing what I call a double whammy. Okay? I'm slapping her in the face by telling her that I have no time for her, but I have time for my friend. That's a whack. And now I'm slapping her in the face the other way by saying, not only do I not have time for you and I have plenty of time for my friend, I'm also not going to tell you what we talked about because that would take too much energy. Did I mean any of that to come across that way? No, because we guys are, what's the word? You've forgotten? Clueless. So, I'm right here with you, so I'm not bashing you, I'm bashing us. Guys can be absolutely clueless and go through the things that we have just described and have no idea. What did I do? Or what didn't I do?
What was wrong with it?
Yeah, why are you upset? Well, that night, we had a very animated conversation. And I got a very clear message, clueless as I was, that this is not acceptable. Is that pretty straight? Do you guys get that? This is not acceptable. I think it's one of the strongest kind of statements my wife ever made to me in our early marriage. But I got the message. I realized it's like somehow she rattled my cage. Okay? I mean, like maybe hit me with a ball bat upside the head. It got through to me that I did all these things and I didn't even realize I did them because I was clueless. And so things began to change.
Now, just for those of you who may only be hearing this audio, I don't know, but when he's using slap me on this side face and that side, this isn't real. This isn't real. I mean, this is a figure of speech. You understand that, right? So we don't want any misunderstandings coming out. But the Waters have this seminar, and he talks about his wife slapping him upside the face, and then turn around and slapping him on the. No, it's a figure of speech. So I just want to. I know they understood it, but just for clarification, because we don't want to make assumptions, right? Because when we make assumptions, we have expectations, and then sometimes things go backwards. But it was a learning lesson for both of us, because I really believe that men in general do not understand when they give vague answers or avoidance tactics. That really, here's what's happening. When a woman marries a man, that man becomes her life. Everything, her life revolves around her husband to a degree. When a man marries a woman, she becomes a part of his life. Do you hear the difference?
Very, very important.
Very important, because we didn't understand this. Again, this is just how we entered marriage. He was my life. Yes, I have my occupation, I've got my friends, I have my church duties, we have mutual friends, but my life revolved around him. I don't make decisions, I come to him. I want to go shopping, I invite him to go with me. He is a part of my everything in my life. When a guy gets married, she just fits into the... And then, I've got a wife, and that's good, but, I've got other things too. And so men are more apt to live their life almost in a single mindset, and then add the wife in where she fits conveniently to the needs.
Now, can I say something
Sure.
to that? This is also, we don't want there to be any misunderstandings on this piece either. Okay. What she says is absolutely true.
Okay.
Okay?
He's going to balance me out.
Okay, but guys, we are not aware that we are doing that.
That's right.
This is not a conscious thing. We don't sign the marriage license and then on the back we write, I'm clueless, I'm going to do this, I'm going to still have all my hobbies, I'm still going to go out with my buddies, I'm still going to watch my sports, whatever that is. Okay, you fill in the blanks. We don't go into it saying, oh, you're just in this box and I'm your whole box. Okay, we don't go into it thinking that, at least generally speaking. Okay, so it's part of the cluelessness, but it is after 32 years of working with marriages, I can tell you, this is a reality in the vast majority of husband and wife relationships. The guy continues to live out his single life choices while his wife has been immersed in their life together. So the guy still wants to watch football all day if he's a football guy, or he wants, for me, I didn't watch sports very much, I played sports very much. And I would say things like, honey, I got a game tonight. You want to come? If she wanted to come, great. If you don't want to come, see you later. You see the single mentality in that? And so guys tend to be more that way in more parts of life. And because guys are single-focused, I don't mean that as we're single versus married. Single-focused means that we are on what we're on. Okay? We're in that task. We're in that task. So you combine cluelessness with single-mindedness, and you've got a mess if you're really not connecting with your wife. Okay? Did you all follow that?
Okay, so
Good.
now we want to talk about 7 ways we can build effective communication, right? We want to turn it to the positive, what we can do to make the picture different. And really, communication is the foundation of a healthy relationship. It's our communication with God and God with us that establishes our relationship and the foundation of our closeness with Him, so also in the marriage relationship. So the first key to effective communication is you must make time daily for it. Not just make time, but you actually do it.
Make time and take time.
That's right. When we first started, because we had issues with poor communication, and we thought, okay, we're going to talk every day. We're going to set a time every day to talk. That was a good step forward. So we made the time, but inevitably it seemed like more than we like to think, things would come up during that time that we had set aside to interfere or to compete with. And our human nature is, this is important out here. That phone is ringing. I got to get it. This is happening. I need to do this. This is a one-off. We got to take care of this. But they compound over time. And so then you don't really have the time. So we had to back it up and say, we're not only going to make time every day, but we're actually going to take time. That means we have an answering machine that phone call can go to. That means the children can self-manage another 20 minutes because this is important for us to have this time together.
Yeah, so making the time and taking the time, do you understand the concept? Okay. Jesus said something very profound. If you know these things, happy are you if you do them. Is there a difference? I can tell you that we have had people say to us on more than a few occasions that we're in desperate need of marital help. We said to them, you need to set the next 30 days to communicate every day with your spouse. And the guy who's desperately in trouble in his marriage says this, 30 days? That's a long time. That's a direct quote. I'll never forget it, okay?
Almost the intonation as well.
Yeah, it was almost the exact intonation. 30 days! Now, if you feel that way, you're already in trouble, okay? Because this girl is the love of my life, okay? It is not a chore anymore to communicate daily with her, okay? Do you think it's important to communicate daily with God? Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands on whether you do it every day, because that's your business. But think about it. Just like we got blocked many times when we made the commitment to take this time, and the phone would ring, or something would happen with our children, or somebody at the church would call and say, there's a myriad of things that can happen. But when you decide that every day is important, we used to get a lot of pushback on every day, didn't we? Mm-hmm. And we said, well, at least 3 times a week. We don't do that anymore. If I only talk to God 3 times a week, I'm a disaster. How about you? If I only talk to my wife meaningfully 3 times a week, the marriage is not working very well. Every day. Is it worth it?
Amen.
Yeah, now I'm passionate about this because it will make the difference. The devil hates the difference, but your marriage will love the difference to make time and take it every day.
Yeah, well, the Wiseman says, and we use this for so many other things, but we take common verses and plop it into the context of marriage, right? Because that's really the foundation of life, in life to continue, is in the marriage. So, to everything there is a season. There's a time for everything, right? And notice what it says next, and a purpose. A purpose. Right? So God's not just saying, oh, you just need to take time to talk together every day as a husband and wife. He's saying you need to have a time, a season set every day so that you can communicate, because there's a purpose I have for you in this. First of all, you are going to understand each other better. Secondly, your love is going to grow. Thirdly, you are going to now be able to be used as my vessels or witnesses out to other people.
Or in the home first.
Or in the home. So there is a purpose to this communication, every purpose under the heaven. So I think that fits right here very well in this. And we have seen a marked difference in our relationship after all.
want to have my way, my say. That's our natural. And God wants to give us an understanding heart so that we can become one in Him. And it's possible. You want that? So, listen with an understanding heart. Number 3. This is a good one. Allowing for differences of perspective. Is that okay? Does it feel okay? No, not especially if it doesn't go along with my perspective. Okay. Because my perspective is right, obviously. Is it not true? That's how we think naturally. If it wasn't how we feel or how we think, we wouldn't think that way. But when we think that way, we want to be right. We like to be right. And we went to a party, church gathering, get together. We had a great time. Not what he said. I said, what do you mean that's not? I was there. She says, I was there too. Can you hear where we're going? We're on 2 different perspectives. And we're on a fast track to lose the beauty of our evening because she's not seeing it my way, and I'm not seeing it her way. And that often leads to arguments and misunderstandings in real time. So, today and for many years, we give each other room to have a different perspective. And instead of trying to convince the other to see life the way I see it, or the way she sees it, we actually see life in a different dimension now because we see it through each other's eyes. Is that a better end? It's amazing, okay? Instead of saying, you gotta see it my way, okay? Can you hear that? Now, we usually don't say it quite like that, but we feel that strongly sometimes. Like, how can you say, and I love the example in the Bible. This is in the Bible, okay? How many demoniacs were there? Come on. 2 or 1? Okay, so I love this example because I remember back in my debating years, when I was younger, I used to like to debate things in Sabbath school and stuff like that. I don't do that anymore either. But, okay, so who's lying here? There's nobody lying. It's a different perspective. The point of the story is the same in each of the books of the Gospels, okay? Where they mention it. But to me, it's either this way, no. God wants us to see that it doesn't have to be just this way. It can be viewed through the eyes of the doctor. It can be viewed through the eyes of the fisherman. But as long as the main point of the gospel is brought out, perspective doesn't have to be rubber stamped. Is it fair? We need that in our marriages.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. That'll really boost your communication. Number 4 is express appreciation. Now, does that sound elementary?
Because we need to go back to the basics.
Everybody, how many of you have children? Can I see your hands? I'm assuming most of you. Okay, quite a few of you. We spend a lot of energy trying to teach our children to say thank you when they get something, or please if they want something, right? I mean, if you can remember going through these exercises, it seemed like forever. And then we realized, wait a minute, it's because we're not modeling it. We're telling them an expectation. What do you say when we're thank you, Grandma. Okay, what do you say? How do you ask for this? Please, Leon. Okay. But it just seemed like we were going over and over and over and over and over this. And finally, we realized we don't model it. We need to model it here in this relationship. Using expressions of appreciation, courteous speaking. Honey, would you please bring me a drink of water? thank you for taking the trash out. Whatever we can do, please and thank you, those basic phrases that seem so elementary are really building a very happy relationship in the marriage and in the families. So that's very important. We tend to look at the negative in others and see the positive in ourselves. Is that fair? Humanly speaking, that's not when you got.
Plus, we're self-deprecating, which is another issue.
Yes. But with God's help, we see the positive in the other person. And that's what we look for, and then we express that and appreciate. So use expressions of appreciation. Colossians 4, verse 6 says, let your speech be always seasoned with salt. Think about that. What is salt for? To preserve, right? Salt's a preservative. Season our speech with salt, our spice or whatever, because we want to preserve the relationship, we want to preserve the communication. We want it to be helpful. Another place, season always with grace. Another way the scriptures talks about. So we want that kind of daily communication happening here. We cannot count the times that we address each other, not by first names, but by endearing terms. This is also important, falls under here. Endearing terms, honey, sweetheart, babies, whatever, that just flows off the tongue in a moment. And then in that communication, if we're needing something or want to express appreciation, you bring in those phrases of thank you, or I appreciate when you do that for me, it means a lot to me. So we take it from just saying thank you for bringing me the water. It means a lot to me that you are thoughtful. So you just expand that out, and that is just huge to develop that loving relationship.
It is, because even with our children, we tend to see the things they're not doing right more naturally and pass over the things that they are doing right because they're supposed to do it right. But we need to encourage the good in every relationship. Whenever we encourage the good grows. Isn't that beautiful? When all we do is focus on, man, I told you 1,000 times. Probably a big exaggeration, but it feels like it, right?
And you're going to keep telling them.
And we're going to keep telling them, and it's going to keep being a negative experience, but it's amazing when we do this in our marriage, and we do it in our family, and that is encourage every good thing we see. And the amazing thing that will start happening is we saw it in our home, and we've seen it in our marriage, that when we do that, the negative starts going away. It's like, you realize that we haven't had that happen? And when the kids were there, do you realize that we haven't dealt with this for 2 weeks? And we'll look at each other, yeah, because we're encouraging the good. And encouragement always motivates better than, what's the matter with you? Can't you get this done? Okay? Encouragement versus, it's a positive, clear message. Number 5, be sensitive, positively sensitive to nonverbal communication. Do you know that nonverbal communication in our waking hours is 80% of all communication? 20% is verbal. 80% of our life, while we're awake and interacting, engaging, 80% of it is nonverbal. We need to pay attention to that and be willing to let God adjust us in that, okay? One of our family councils, we enjoyed doing family councils for, adjusting family life, and I remember we always gave the whole family the opportunity to talk, and so, is there anything that, Daddy needs to work on? Well, Dad, you get this wrinkled forehead. I said, I get a wrinkled forehead? What's it look like? Oh, Dad, you can't make it happen unless it's really happening. So we talked about it. My wrinkled forehead. And I said, children, thank you. It doesn't feel good, but thank you for bringing that to my attention. I give you permission the next time you see me with a wrinkled forehead, you can tell me respectfully. But Daddy, that's the wrong time to tell you. Is this real or what? I said, I understand that. By God's grace, when you tell me, Daddy will hear the Spirit speak before he speaks. And praise God, the first time they did it on me, it was a couple days later, and I was ready to do my, what do you mean? But the Spirit spoke to my heart, and, oh yeah, something going on up there. Something going on in here too. And by God's grace, I responded to that. But you can see that stuck with me, okay? That's a nonverbal. And it was not a positive nonverbal, right?
So we want to build the positive nonverbals, right? Just looking at your spouse when you talk to them in the eye is a huge nonverbal. But it's really a communication that I want to hear what you say. It's important to me. I love you. I'm with you right now. I'm connected. So that's a simple example of a positive.
Smiling is a positive nonverbal.
That's right. All the time. Smile as much as you can. And if your cheeks start to hurt, you know you're not doing it enough. Because when you do it enough, there's no more pain.
Keep smiling shade.
That's right. Stay on the topic, number 6. When you're in a discussion that needs to be worked through, stay on the topic of what you are discussing till the finish. Because what happens, and this is, I think this tends to be more women than men, is we have a situation come up that we are needing to discuss, and we're going to do it properly. In order for me to give strength or proof to my position, I will pick things out of the past, add to that. And that also happened. Making a case. This also was the same thing that happened a couple of weeks ago with you. And the month before, in this situation, you did the same. And so just keep one topic, one issue in the present, and deal with it in the present. Don't bring all the past history forward. You can't work through it all. And when that starts to come forward, it naturally causes the other person, whichever direction it's coming from, to become defensive. And then the communication breaks down further. So stay on the topic. If you look at the life of Jesus, he was hammered, wasn't he? With all kind of questions and suspicions and ways to try to, pin him down and manipulate him from, those who were not fond of him, threatened by him. And he did not let them derail him from the topic. He just kept the topic clear. He brought it to a clear conclusion. When they tried to trap Jesus in this way, he simply let them fall in their own snare because he wouldn't be diverted from the point that needed to be made. And that's how it needs to be in our communication.
Yeah.
Staying on the topic.
We call it freight training because we're visual people. So if you're visual, you can see a picture. So when one of us it did tend to be more you add those. I'd say, your freight training here. Do we want to just stay on the topic right now and we can resolve this, or do we have to bring in all the stuff they did last year and last month? Because I said the roll's getting pretty heavy on me right now. So, and she's been very good about that. We haven't done that in a long time.
But we used the term freight training because it was a visual, and it helped both of us, especially me, to know that this is what, we want to just stay on the topic. Let's just resolve it. It's simple right now, right? It's manageable. Let's not create it into something so big it's unmanageable.
Good. All right, number 7. Save this to last. This is pretty important. And that is honesty and integrity in the marriage. We live in a time now where it is very in your face to be dishonest. Easy to get around the truth. Easy to do whatever you want to that is diminishing integrity. And we deal with a lot of this in our marriage counseling, things that go wrong. And it's not just infidelity in marriage. It can be just, one or the other or both are protecting each other by being dishonest. Or protect themselves. It works both ways. Some are saying, I know that if I tell my husband this, he'll just go ballistic, and then we won't communicate for a week. And so I don't want to say that to him. So it's not outright lying, it's just suppressing the truth. So we want to be able to live in an atmosphere in our marriage where we can be completely honest. Free, okay? Now that doesn't mean that if you have not been having regular communication, number one, making and taking time, that's the first time you set a date, let's say it's tomorrow, 5 o'clock, then that means you now get the chance to tell everything that's on your mind, and you're going to tell the truth, and nothing but the truth, and by the time you get done talking, whoever the other person is, he or she, is exhausted. That's not what we're talking about, okay? In fact, that honesty, while it needs to be there, and that making and taking time for communication is number one, let's make that the most positive experience we can so that we'll want to do it every day, okay? And that means that we don't just unload stuff that's pent up in us, but rather we start the communication by reminiscing about our love and maybe how we've grown apart, but that we want to keep our love alive and make it a very positive communication.
So this also would then include the phrase, "oh, nothing." Because you can't have a 30-minute conversation with anybody and come away with nothing. Even if what you talk about has no real sense or value, there was still something you talked about. Whether it's who won the ball game, you still talked about something that isn't, is an absolute or is a fact, right? So this honesty and integrity is so important. Men and women have different ways of being dishonest or shady in how they communicate. Men get away with a lot by saying nothing. I mean, when they're asked for a question, "oh, nothing," or evasive answers. So I said to him, how is it that you can have, brain waves in your brain going? Because if I hooked them up, right, like we did an ICU or patients to see what their real status was, otherwise their mind. Are they a living vegetable because we're supporting life? Or is there really some activity left there that we can support that life and hopefully bring that life back into, functional life? I said, you can't tell me that all of these brainwaves are happening in your brain and there's absolutely nothing there. Because that would look a line like this. Like
Flatline.
Flatline. Like the heart would be flatline, that's not good either. The brain is always flatline good. And so, what your wife is really saying to you is, I just want to know how you see what's going on up there. Which is what you told me without even asking before we're married, right? So please don't say nothing because I have trouble believing it. Now after 40, well not quite, I learned this 3 years ago.
About 38 years.
I finally understand and do accept the fact that a man has the ability to be cognitive
Neutral.
He can be breathing, looking at you, hearing things, and be just, I don't know what word is, flat line, I don't know.
Wait, some people say you're in park. I like to say you're in neutral, because you've got options there. I honestly, we laugh about this, but we've had this conversation on and off
Through decades of time.
decades of marriage. Fortunately, most of it was, the toxicity was mostly the first years. But now she actually,
I do believe he can be there and looking at me and hearing me and have no cognition of what's going on.
well, it isn't when you're talking.
Okay, now I'm talking.
No, it's when
I'm
yeah.
getting it, I'm slow.
So it's in a moment where she might see me, pondering what would be in her mind, pondering something, and she'd say, "So, what do you think about honey?" Nothing.
How can you be pondering if it's nothing?
Well, you thought I was pondering. You thought I was pondering. But okay, so But, so my nothing box, as one person describes it, is not an very active box. Because I'm pretty connected. I've learned to be pretty connected, but she has honestly been able to see that some of the situations we counsel are almost unbelievable. I mean, sadly unbelievable. So at least you have a little bit of a flavor for it, okay? You can't really grasp it entirely, but the guys can go into that neutral place. And husbands, this is not permission to develop that neutral place. This is encouraging you to be transformed by grace. By grace are you saved through faith, right? Not of yourself, but you can cooperate.
Yeah, but using that analogy, park or neutral, you're not moving forward in either's relationship. It's that simple. In order to move the relationship forward, you have to put it in drive. It can be first gear, that's okay, at least you're moving, right? It can be for one low, you're still moving. But just don't leave it in park or neutral or whatever.
Yeah, so when I'm talking to guys about this, I deal very specifically with it. Because we need to get, when we're married, we need to disengage from so much of the in-park, neutral, whatever you want to call it, nothing box. Because when we make the commitment to marriage, we're making a commitment that the two shall become one. It isn't just my world anymore. It's our world, okay? And so I'm a very different person 41 years into marriage and for the last, quite a few years. But that's my choices. Not by enabling that old behavior or not by making excuses for it or saying, I need the first hour when I get home to be in my nothing box. My wife is very sensitive to, I am a more reserved person. I can take less of the social input than my wife. She's an amazing hostess. But I don't, so we have that understanding.
Okay, so those are the 7 keys to good communication. We'll take a couple of minutes. We're going to just touch on some of the things that trip us up easy. We don't want to focus on these.
These are called breakers. Communication breakers. Okay?
And we've already touched on some of them, but we're going to highlight them again for sake of making it clear. This is what we're going to stay away from. Number 1 is absolute statements. You always say that. You never, whatever. And when we use those absolutes, always, never, in very strong terms, or in tones, it's rarely, opposite it's never, it's rarely in a positive light. It's almost always on the negative side. You always forget the trash. I said that to tenants more than once, because the trash was being left regularly. When I asked him to take it out, he would agree. I even put it by the door, and he'd move it to go out the door and not take it. So I couldn't compute that. He did. But, when I attacked with you never, or you always forget the trash, or you never take the trash out, he could remember 2 weeks before when I asked him that he actually did it.
Yeah, and then no credit for it.
And so then it became, this debate. So stay away from absolute. If you want to use absolute, you always, and you never, you always.
You'll always be the love of my life.
That's right. You'll always be the love of my life. Okay, put it in the positive context.
Yeah, and that's takes some thought to do that. See, she was looking for the right word to do it positively, right?
Yeah.
So we want to get out of that communication breaker of absolutes. Number 2, we want to get away from bringing up the past. Bringing up the past often keeps us from
Living in the present.
living and solving in the present. So stop bringing up the past. If the past comes up because it's recurring and it's the present too often, then it needs to be dealt with, but not in the past. It needs to be dealt with in the present and then not keep bringing it up. Bring it up, be willing to resolve it. Number 3, no more screaming or yelling. I think that's fair. Is that good communication, scream or yell?
Nope.
Is it bad communication? Okay, yeah, and it does not do any of us any good. So you can pretty much say that anytime loud voices, screaming or yelling, comes in to communication becomes broken. Okay?
Even the level of there's no screaming or yelling, not even raising voices, but there's an intensity in how we frame our words, or what's happening here is coming out through our mouth and through our nonverbal. So be sensitive that intensity. If it's growing, we need to spend a few moments with the Lord and ask Him to cool us down, right, before we continue in the conversation. Okay, the fourth communication breaker is silence. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? This is one I used frequently early on because the intensity would grow and I would go the other way, just be silent, I would be speaking. But to answer questions, I just was non-communicating with my words. Yeah.
A lot of nonverbals were screaming. But no verbals. Okay, that drove me crazy. Okay. So we're not doing that anymore.
And here I'm going to put in here, some couples pick the time of day when they go to bed as their talk time.
Because that's the only thing we do.
Because they feel like they've done everything else they have to do, so now we're going to talk before we go to bed. It's not bad, but the problem is the one who isn't talking oftentimes falls asleep. And then it becomes a problem. That early on in our marriage, where I would feel like now he's calmed down for the day. Not that it's wild all day long, but I mean,
Thank you, dear.
I'm not like this every day, but sometimes, I don't know, something about the dark, feeling like I can kind of open up my heart a little bit and kind of share how I perceive things are going or not going so well, usually not going so well. You know, I felt like he was listening and then,
That's a real communication breaker, folks.
and I felt this. Here I'm finally willing to open up my heart and he just falls asleep. I know he doesn't care. No, he does care, it's just he can't stay awake. Now actually, it's the opposite. He can stay awake, but I want to get some pillow. Come on. So we don't use that time as our communication time because it's not a healthy time for us. You have to think what works for you.
Right. And the last one we're going to talk about is laughter and tears. Now, laughter is good medicine. We understand that, and there's certainly laughter is great. But there's times that tears and laughter can be real communication breakers. Okay? And my wife may be a little bit different in this than a lot of people.
Yeah, Mom would give that a word.
Yeah, okay, you said it, not me. But, if I would get injured or something, okay, or, you better explain it, because
All right, let me explain.
you're the only two people I know.
When there's a certain level of intensity, one of my default coping mechanisms, which I didn't understand, was just to laugh. So this was very unhealthy in our first year of marriage, when he got very intense, and he's very serious, and he's going to get his point across, and I just cracked up laughing. He would take that as, very insulting, but I didn't know how else to respond. I had cried, or I had been quiet, but now it's just like, that's just how my body released the emotional tension inside, and that was unhealthy.
Yeah, that's it, so, you're laughing, aren't you? You're laughing! And then she couldn't hold it anymore, she just broke out. It's just hysterical laughter.
And he said, but I am dead serious.
Anyway, so that's probably pretty unique, but the tears is not unique. And we've seen this played, this has been played out, it's rarely by guys, but I have heard it with guys, but tears can be very manipulative, okay? And this is very common, okay? So maybe not the common, you laughing and the intensity, but if you relate to that, good. But the tears can be a big manipulation. So when the tears start to flow, God caves in, okay? But I'll tell you what, when that's done through manipulation, there's nothing wrong with tears. There's nothing wrong with laughter. But if those are placed in the inappropriate spaces, in communication, they break communication. Because now the woman understands that if it really gets pushed to shove and I can't get my husband to go along with me, I'll just cry. And then he'll back down, but he will resent me for that, okay? And, how many guys do you hear about, when you're talking about, your life record with tickets. How many guys have said, yeah, I got out of that ticket, the officer came up and I just broke down and cried. Women get out of tickets that way. Did you know that? That was an informal survey. A lot of women have gotten out of tickets crying. I don't know any men that have gotten out of tickets crying. So don't use that vehicle to break communication.
I mean, there's times when tears come spontaneously, emotionally. They're not manipulative.
They know
You know the difference. Yeah, if you're doing it for manipulation and to get your husband to see it your way or to do it your way, and you're just refusing to find mutuality and coming to a mutual conclusion or resolve, then it's unhealthy. That's what we're saying. So spend your energy on the positive communication builders.
That's right. Just look out for the breakers, spend the energy on the effective communication. Okay, so I think we're going to take a break. When is our...
3:30, so we have a 25-minute break.
Okay, good.
So we'll close with a prayer at this session, and then it gives us time to stretch,
Drink some water.
facilities, get some liquids, communicate, and then we'll come back. We got an exciting topic coming up next. Father in heaven, we thank you for the Sabbath, and we thank you that we are here together in the freedom to be able to discuss your word in practical terms. We know that we often don't realize how blessed we are to be able to meet together without feeling pressure or that it's illegal or other things can happen. We just thank you for that privilege, and now we want to invite you to take the words we've heard here and apply them in our relationships, that we can grow more like you in our love for one another, and that we can communicate better, more effectively, and that our communication will not just be good in our marriages, but that we will improve in all of our other relationships